It's not going to happen tomorrow or the next day. It takes us time to be able to make the damage assessments and put them into place.
Hundreds of residents of Fort Smith evacuated to shelters in neighboring Illinois, warning for other residents near rivers, be prepared to leave. And attorneys for a decorated Navy SEAL facing a murder charge in the death of an ISIS prisoner will try again Friday to get the case dismissed against him. This is Fox News.
Get a free Polar Pop any size when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a free coffee any size when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get $5 off any Circle K car wash package when you purchase $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
We have some really great home loan programs, but do you know we have great business loans too? Every day we're working with companies to purchase equipment, to buy or build properties, or make tenant improvements. We offer letters of credit, working capital, and term loans, and we make all of our credit decisions here. Commercial loans, commercial banking from Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
A car bomb explodes in Afghanistan, killing or wounding at least 7 people. It's the second attack in Kabul in 2 days. It's putting the city on high alert. No immediate claim of responsibility for the blast, but it came just 1 day after ISIS said it carried out a suicide attack outside a military training academy that killed at least 6. A South Korean newspaper reports that North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has executed 2 of his top officials.
They were the top 2 negotiators with the United States in the run-up to the second nuclear summit in Vietnam in February. 1 month later, a South Korean newspaper now reports that Kim Yak-chol, the number 2, was charged with spying for the United States and executed by a firing squad. 4 other foreign ministry officials were also executed. Why? Well, the paper reports North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is blaming all of them for the summit's collapse.
Fox's Kristen Fisher. Kim's regime has reportedly subjected the summit's senior negotiator, Kim Yong-chol, to forced labor. Meantime, the top diplomat for the U.S., Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, is in Europe with a warning about Chinese technology.
Mike Pompeo meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. A senior State Department official saying he'll reiterate American concerns as European allies, including Germany and Britain, consider hiring China's Huawei to build next-generation 5G wireless networks. Pompeo also travelling to Switzerland and the Netherlands before joining President Trump when he makes a state visit to the UK next week. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
And in Louisiana, Governor John Bel Edwards signs a bill into law that bans abortion as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy. That makes it the 5th state to enact such a law. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant. Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about the food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice. Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I guess by now everybody in our international radio listening audience has that Second Amendment as down pat as I do. If you woke me up in the middle of the night from a sound sleep, I'd probably wake up and a well-regulated it starts. Yeah. So, but it's important, and that's why we keep doing it. You know, the Bill of Rights in the United States, the stress on the securing and protection of individual rights is what sets our country apart from just about every other country in the world. The devotion to individual rights, which are protected by our Bill of Rights, not the least of which is the Second Amendment. So today I've got a little piece dealing with one of my favorite candidates over on the Democrat side. And boy, that's hard. I mean, when you look at who's over there on the Democrat side, the Democrats saying, hey, look at me. I want to be your president. And you've got Pocahontas over there and Cory Booker, Joe Biden, who's almost as old as I am. You got a real cast of characters over there, but this guy Swalwell, you know, if my name were Swalwell, I'd change it to Mueller. But Swalwell has about as much chance of getting the Democrat nomination for president as Rory Respicio does, and probably for the same reason. But Eric Swalwell is campaigning to be president. He's doing everything he can to be considered a viable presidential candidate. That includes drawing attention to his key, and perhaps only, campaign issue, gun control. That effort took him to Houston recently, where he spoke with activists about his gun control efforts. And he really drew a big crowd, 15 people. Gun safety is the most important issue of Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell's presidential campaign. Texas is synonymous with the Second Amendment. Hey, I'll tell you what, them Texas boys, you know, if you're down there in Texas, you're driving around in a pickup, you better have a gun rack in the window of that pickup, and you better have a 30-30 mounted in that gun rack, or folks are going to say, that ain't no Texan there. I wonder where that guy's from. Texas is synonymous with the Second Amendment. The juxtaposition brought candor Wednesday from Houstonians who gave Swalwell their opinions on the gun debate. Swalwell's, quote, gun violence listening tour stopped off at a downtown Houston coffee shop, and the four-term California congressman did not stop traffic. The shop's baristas did not step away from their espresso machines to gawk. His name provoked a shoulder shrug from one of them, white noise between customers' orders. Though Swalwell, 38, is a frequent guest on cable news shows, he also introduced legislation early this month to suspend the statute of limitations for sitting presidents, so President Donald Trump could be prosecuted for federal crimes he may have committed before or during his time in office. He is relatively unknown outside Capitol Hill in his East Bay congressional district. Well, that tells you a lot right there. East Bay, East San Francisco Bay. Sitting next to Swalwell on the sofa Wednesday, Hart asked the 15 people who gathered for the roundtable discussion to compare Congress's response to the September 11 attacks to its response to mass shootings. Houston, Texas is a city with a population of 2.3 million people. As an urban center, there are a lot of people who support gun control based on the misguided idea that such measure will actually reduce gun violence in our cities. Swalwell's message should resonate in a place like that. And yet, there were just 15 people there. Wow. Now, Democrat frontrunners like Senator Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, as well as former President Joe Biden, have all rolled out their own gun control packages and are garnering a great deal of support for that. However, they also have plans beyond gun control. They're not single-issue candidates. Plus, none of them threaten to, quote, nuke their fellow Americans. So there's that. And this mess, there's a message to Democrat candidates and candidates in general. While gun control is something that your base may like, it's not the most pressing issue. They care about a lot of other things besides gun control, and when it comes down to it, gun control won't be enough to garner support. Clearly, after all, Swalwell's anti-gun message hasn't even gotten him enough support to get mentioned in the polling, apparently. It seems that even Democrats don't care enough about gun control to back the gun control candidate. 15 people out of 2.3 million plus the surrounding areas. Frankly, that should be a clue to just pack it in. So I suspect there are folks down in Houston, Texas that are part of our international radio listening audience. So if you happen to run into Eric Swalwell in what people call coffee shops nowadays, they're not really coffee shops. What would you call them, Real Joe Cruzies? Places that like Starbucks that employ baristas?
Speakeasies. No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, they're definitely not coffee shops, but whatever they are, if you're down there in Houston and you run into Eric Swalwell, tell him that the verdict on Tall Tales is, partner, you ain't got a chance. Okay, so that's how we dispose of the Second Amendment, and from there we go to Jimmy Ekotny. And of course, that's our approach to Meet the Press, where we look at the editorials of each of our daily newspapers. I check them out for good English usage, proper grammar, and I try to find some merit in each of them, and the more meritorious of the two gets the coveted Blue Star. And when I award the Blue Star, depending on your location, whether in your downtown Agatna or in Tamuning, when I award the Blue Star, you may be able to hear champagne corks popping in the editorial boardroom of the winning newspaper. Lately, doing Jimmy Ekotny has been pretty much confined to awarding the Blue Star to the Post and wondering when the Daily News will run the next locally produced editorial. The Daily News is a Gannett affiliate, and I'm sure that they have a dictionary down there in the editorial boardroom, so that if you look up the word better, the definition for better is easier. So rather than spend the time and energy to run a local editorial that might have some impact locally and run the chance, you get a chance of getting that Blue Star. Rather than do that, it's better to just copy something from USA Today. Better because, well, it's easier. So oftentimes the Daily News runs stuff on the editorial page attributing it to USA Today or the Gannett News Service. And we've caught him a couple of times running something from Gannett without attributing it. In other words, making you think that this story, which ordinarily bashes Donald Trump, is a product of the local editorial boardroom. We've caught him doing that. And when I've caught him, I didn't give him the Blue Star. I have a red pen around here somewhere. I gave him the red P. P for plagiarize. So today, guess what? Here's the title of the editorial today. Another View. Another View. In other words, this is not going to be our view. It's going to be another view. And it's titled Social Media Skepticism. And It's from a gentleman named Glenn Harlan Reynolds, a University of Tennessee law professor. Ooh, yeah. And he's a member of the USA Today Board of Contributors. I have a feeling that he probably doesn't live on Guam. I just suspect that he probably lives in Tennessee. Living in Tennessee would give him a certain feeling for what we think is important out here in the Western Pacific in our tropical paradise called Guam. So I'm not going to waste your time or my time or the real Joe Cruz's time even reading beyond the title of this editorial. But I did find something that was meritorious on the editorial page of the Daily News today, causing me to say, wow, it's good they run letters to the editor, because sometimes you can find some real journalism in stuff submitted by their readers. They're probably ever-dwindling number of readers. But this one is a letter to the editor, and it says, "Give Trump beatdown editorial pieces a rest." And this is by a gentleman named Shepard de Benedictis, who is a guest columnist. And when I finish reading this, I'm going to recommend that they hire Mr. Shepard Benedictis to be on the staff of their columnist, because he really can do it. And Shepard has posted here on Facebook in the past. He's called up a couple of times, so he's part of the Tall Tales International listening audience. So needless to say, he makes a lot of sense. And here's what he says. In response to our view, Act Like a President, published on 27 May, which I think is the one that I took the Daily News to the woodshed on. How about just leaving Memorial Day alone was my approach, right? This is what he said. Political dissent is a wonderful aspect of our democracy, defined as our right to disagree without fear of victimization. It's enshrined in the Constitution as our First Amendment right. I would never suggest my fellow man back down from his or her convictions. Now, Jimmy is not, I'm sorry, Shepard is not woke, or instead of saying his or her convictions, he would have said their convictions. So I like him already, right? And I agree with the premise of the article. The president should act more like a statesman. However, why the Daily News chooses to publish another President Donald Trump beatdown piece on Memorial Day is beyond me. We live in times when we hear about our country's widening social and political divide on a daily basis. Is it just me, or are the same sources that complain about this divide the same that beat the, quote, orange man bad drum nonstop? I know the opinion page gets great latitude when it comes to these matters, but could we take just one day out of the year to come together in the spirit of 76? 1776, you know? An article that highlights things that unify us, things that make America the greatest place on earth would be nice. Memorial Day is a holiday meant to celebrate the freedom that our fallen soldiers have gifted. You have the rest of the year to wag your tongue at us. Give it a rest. Yeah. So good for Shepard Benedictis, and I'm going to do it again, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, I'm darn sure not going to give it to the Daily News. But, Shep, you join that rare club of people who have been awarded the Blue Star. And I guess that's probably about the closest that the Daily News is ever going to come to getting another Blue Star is by writing editors' letters to the editor like Shepard Benedictus's letter, which was a good letter. It makes a good point. And on top of that, it's the same point that I made. You know, leave Memorial Day alone. Bash Trump some other time. But I've also made the point, you know, if Trump weren't president, the Daily News would have a lot of blank pages because they don't seem to have much else to say except, well, let's really bash Donald Trump here today. Okay, then we go to the Post, the odds-on favorite to get the Blue Star. You know, if you were to go into a bookie joint, or a lot of places now have legal, what do you call them, betting parlors, and you were to bet that the Daily News would get the Blue Star, they'd probably give you 5-to-1 odds, and even that wouldn't be a very good bet. So here's the Post. Please, let's get proper evaluations done for GPA, GWA leaders. Yeah, well, it's a pretty timely editorial, isn't it? And before I get into it, wait, I'll wait for a little while. In any private enterprise, there is a matrix, a list of expectations given to any employee. And if those expectations are met, management might provide a raise or a bonus or a combination of the two for a job well done. A few months ago, when the Commission on Consolidated Utilities told the public that the raises given to top executives were based on their talent and performance, no one argued that the raises weren't deserved or that they weren't necessary for the retention of skilled and educated people. The issue from the perspective of ratepayers was the manner in which the raises were given. The discussion was held behind closed doors and a final vote made in public without any public discussion. It took less than a minute. When it was determined that the raises were given in an illegal fashion, the CCU rescinded the raises. GWA General Manager Miguel Bordallo returned the bonus given to him. GPA General Manager John Beneventi hasn't made a public comment, but we assume that he too had returned the bonus given to him. The recordings of that executive private meeting in which those discussions held were recently released. We were disappointed. It was revealed that the raises and bonuses that were given were completely arbitrary. Joey Duenas, they were completely arbitrary, notwithstanding that you said over and over again, well, we can't release those minutes because there were evaluations of employees, and we've got to protect their privacy. Yeah, evaluations. You had to have really good ears to hear those evaluations if you listened to the tape. We were disappointed. It was revealed that the raises and bonuses were completely arbitrary. One commissioner in the course of the meeting asked about a bonus for the CCU secretary, who apparently a few years ago received an approximate $4,000 pay adjustment. Commissioner Judith Guthert said perhaps this time a different amount would be fitting, and said perhaps a $5,000 bonus would be fitting. No one stopped and said, well, the secretary's performance in this area wasn't so stellar, but she did above expectations, so perhaps $5,000 would be good. There was no discussion for any of the raises or bonuses. Instead, commissioners licked their fingers and held it up to the wind, like this, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. Held it up to the wind to determine how they would retain top-notch employees and reward the difficult efforts of managers. In other words, they licked their finger, stuck the fingers in the air to see which way the wind was blowing. the wind of public opinion. The decision-making was arbitrary and shows a capriciousness with which the commissioners spend ratepayers' dollars. What makes it so damning is they even discussed how ratepayers would react to the news of top managers getting salary increases for no other reason than that the wind was blowing from the north today. Yeah, well, what can I say? I've been talking about this since I saw the story in the Daily News that outlined the raises. I'm sorry, in the Post, that laid out what the raises were, and the story wound up, and this was done in executive session. And, of course, whenever I see the words executive session, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. And as soon as I saw that, I got on it, did a FOIA, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, you know, I've sent 3 FOIAs into the CCU. They have only responded to one. And the one response that they provided was signed by Joey Duenas telling me what the CCU's position was. And, of course, I did another FOIA asking for the minutes of that CCU meeting. So, notwithstanding having been taken to the woodshed over and over again, that is, taken to the public woodshed over and over again, the CCU still doesn't get the message that when someone submits a sunshine law request, you can't just blow it off. You can't just ignore it. And if you would like to bring in, CCU, if you'd like to bring in a consultant on that matter, I would suggest a gentleman named Michael Bora, formerly the Director of Land Management, who would tell you that it could cost you $1,000 to blow off a FOIA request. So that's where we are with this. I heard Robert Underwood on Ray's show this morning. And by the way, if you don't listen to the Ray Gibson show every morning, you're missing some really good information. It's entertaining, it's informative, it's interesting, etc. And Ray had Robert Underwood on this morning. Well, Robert isn't exactly what you would call an economic conservative. And Robert said that the hole that the CCU has stepped in this time around is so deep that it could very well lead to the privatization of the 2 utilities, or at least begin the discussion. And of course, he's right. You know, if this is what government management amounts to, then maybe we'd be better off selling the utilities and taking advantage of the way things are done in the private sector. I don't think salary matters are dealt that way by, say, Consolidated Edison or any of the other large utilities. So I got a phone call here from Jimmy. I'm going to come back and award the Blue Star as soon as Jimmy's gone. Okay. So I'm going to award the coveted Blue Star here. And today, the coveted Blue Star goes to, no big surprise here, 2 Blue Stars today. One for Shepard DeBenedictis, who is apparently the best writer the Daily News has, and he doesn't even work there. And the other one goes to the Post for a very good, hard-hitting editorial that we can all sink our teeth into. So good job again, Post. And let me check the count here. That takes the Post up to... see what the number is here, the count. 113 for the Post. To 41 for the Daily News. And I'd say, given that count, 113 for the Post and 41 for the Daily News must have a lucky charm. have gotten it that many times. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, just a simple question.
That's what you think, huh? Okay, go ahead, Jimmy.
Yes or no?
No. It was a pretty simple question, Jimmy.
No, I didn't finish it.
Oh, all right. I thought I had the answer, but go ahead.
The question is simple, very simple, yes or no question.
Uh-huh.
Is GovGuam corrupt?
Is GovGuam corrupt? Okay, so what do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay. Well, it's hard for me to argue with someone who usually presents himself as so well-informed. So until someone comes along and contradicts you, Jimmy, we'll go with your answer, okay?
We agree.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be on the fence on this one. You know, I don't want to give you the final score right now. I want you to watch the play-by-play for the whole game, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer and I don't have any money.
Yeah, well, I can sympathize with that, Jimmy.
Okay. Hey, let's raise some taxes and raise some salaries.
Well, okay.
This is what happens. What has happened. Hey, you make $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year. Okay, now Guam, some statistics.
We got two Jimmys on the line today.
Highest rape rate in the United States of America. Guam probably has the first highest per capita BMW Lexus ownership.
Could I do that, Real Joe Cruz? Could I get that same effect? That way I would never have anybody arguing with me. I could say it and then I could hear it coming right back.
That's because Jimmy's got his radio turned up.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, he needs to turn his radio down a little bit. It won't echo. It won't sound like one of those LBJ speeches.
LBJ? Lyndon Baines Johnson? Oh, plant a shrub, a bush or a tree.
I guess Jimmy doesn't want to turn his radio down. He likes that Grand Canyon reverb effect.
Yeah, echo.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy, I got another caller on line 2, so it's been nice talking to both of you today. You and your echo.
Oh, bless you.
See you later. Okay, let's see what... Ken, tell me what you think about the Daily News and the post-editorial policies. A little louder, please, Ken. Oops. Did I lose him? Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, Ken, I lost you. Can you call back? Okay, so I'm finished with Jimmy and Courtney. I think Ken is on the line calling back. Yeah, it's Ken. So right after the break here, we'll pick you up, Ken. Sorry I lost you there.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There's so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now. now. 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So, Ken, do you think I made a good call giving the Blue Star to both Shepherd de Benedictus and the Post and not to the Daily News?
Yes, I do. I agree with you that we need to have, if we're going to have a local paper running local editorials, it should be written locally and reflect local issues.
Yep.
I mean, we get enough of the national stuff through the rest of the media. We don't get enough local stuff through the rest of the media, so it's a nice balance out that way.
Yeah.
But the reason I called in is I caught part of Jimmy before the echo got so bad I couldn't hear him, talking about compensation at the utilities.
Right.
And I've done a lot of research into compensation at the utilities, trying to figure out where the CCU is getting their numbers from. Because at the prices that we're paying utility managers now, those are the prices that utility companies in the mainland are paying for systems that have competition and have over 1 million customers. Burn water. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. CEO who makes $330,000 a year. He has 1.3 million customers, and he competes with 6 power companies, 2 water companies. So that shows that we're definitely overpaying for what we're getting, because combined, our customer base here is 51,000 meters on the power side and 38,000 meters on the water side. And the biggest customer, 25% of their business is with Department of Defense. You know, so we're definitely overpaying for what we're getting. And if you look at how selling GTA worked out for the people of Guam, I think, you know, the conversation started this morning on Ray's show about maybe the time has come for the people of Guam to cash out. In other words, sell our ownership in the public utilities here on Guam to private companies. I mean, we still have the regulatory authority over them. So there's no need for us to own them.
In fact, it probably goes a little bit farther than that. Not only is there no need for us to own it, there's no really good reason for us to own them. If you stop and look at the evolution of the government of Guam, in 1950, there was no civilian economy here, and all services were provided by the naval government. And you divide governmental services, governmental operations into 2 categories. There are governmental functions and proprietary functions. Governmental is like police, fire, corrections, etc. Proprietary are those kinds of businesses that can and should be operated by private businesses. Well, there weren't any private businesses in 1950, so we got stuck with all of these proprietary functions, and if for no other reason, bureaucratic inertia kept them where they are. And I think we found out just in the last couple of weeks that we don't have a very good deal there with the CCU, correct, Ken?
Absolutely. I mean, look what happened when the federal government deregulated the phone industry. GPA, run by the government, could not compete. Run by private enterprise, not only did it compete, but it excelled. So I think we could see the same thing happening here with the sale of the utilities. I mean, right now GPA has, I think, somewhere around $700 million in loans, and GWA has about that much as well. But if we look at the fixed hard assets and sold those to private enterprise, we'd probably pay off all those bonds and then some, which would put government of Guam overall in a better shape, and we could probably take the excess money and use it to either build a new hospital or pay down the debt to the retirement fund and put government of Guam in even better shape.
Seems right to me.
But it makes too much sense, so you know the politicians won't do it.
Well, the folks in the Senate and the legislature, of course, are very pressure sensitive, and if they think that there would be any pushback, and we went through this in the I think it was the 28th Guam legislature. There was some thought then about selling the water authority, and a lot of folks rose up primarily on a nationalism basis and said, "Oh, you can't sell our water. That's the water belongs to the people of Guam," which of course is true. But when you stop and consider it, water is as close as we'll find anything that's a free good. It's not quite as much a free good as air is, meaning that you could breathe as much as you want. It doesn't cost you anything. Water's pretty close, and when you pay your water bill, you're really not paying for the water. You're paying the cost of getting it out of the ground, processing it, purifying it, and piping it to your toilet, and then piping it from there the other direction. So the water, the ownership of the water wouldn't change hands. But we do have the opportunity to reduce the cost of taking it out of the ground and all the rest of that process. And I can't imagine, I mentioned this earlier in the program, I can't imagine these large utility companies setting salaries for their executives in the same manner that our CCU showed us how they do it on the 27th of November, Ken.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first ones I looked at was SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District. It's a consumer-owned utility. And Guam Power and Guam Water basically are consumer-owned utilities. So the CEO there gets $395,000 a year, but he also has 1.6 million customers. He competes against GPA, Nevada Power, Northern California Power Association. So he's got three major multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 customers that he competes with.
And something else,
Sacramento area.
Something else, Ken, if he's operating in Sacramento, he's got another obstacle that he has to deal with. That is the California environmental wacko. He should probably...
That's true, the air quality district. But the point is, these are organizations that are very, very sensitive. They're large organizations. They have, SMUD has 2,000 employees. Combined Guam Power, Guam Water, I think are around 400 or under 600 employees combined.
Yeah.
So, here's a guy that, is getting just a little bit more than Benavente. He has 25, 30 times the number of customers he deals with. He's dealing with an area of 3,500 square miles compared to 212 square miles, and he has 2,000 employees. And he's getting a little over 100,000 more than Benavente. But when they move Benavente up to that 50th percentile and he's knocking on $600,000 a year, he'll be getting more than the guy in SMUD.
Wow. As they say, such a deal, huh, Ken?
Hey, you heard it on the tape. Their goal is to get management up to the 50th percentile. And they're at the 20th now. So at the 20th, they're getting $225,000. I just can't imagine what they're going to be getting at the 50th. I think they're probably be getting somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. So you think about it: 51,000 customers carrying the cost of $500,000 just on the salary of the general manager. It's unsustainable.
But just think how much better the service will be if we're paying $600,000 for a general manager.
It'll be worse. It'll be worse because they won't have any money for other things.
Yeah.
Oh, they will. They'll raise the rates.
Yeah, that's very true. Money is not a free good like water, right? Okay, Ken. Well, thank you very much for chiming in on that one. Did I lose Ken? Oh, okay. Okay, I got Sam here on line 2. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. How are you doing today?
Good, good.
Well, I'm stuck in traffic once again, and my question, why or how can GWA close off a line of road on a major artery for over 9 months with no infractions? I'm talking about Marine Corps Drive down here in Aspen.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was closed there. The Power Authority is doing something under the road? Is that it?
No, GWA has been pumping from one manhole to another manhole down the road and blocking the outside lane from just north of the old Harley shop to the mental health building.
Uh-huh.
So the northbound lane is down to one lane, and it's been that way since last September.
Wow. So I don't know if there is a regulation that would be applicable to those who block highways in such a manner. Sam, there probably should be, huh?
Well, there used to be the funeral home in East Agania that used to block off the outside lane, and somebody at Guam came and said you can't block off a federal road because we get federal monies and they control the road, we don't.
Uh-huh.
So we can't let you block it off anymore. But I'm wondering how GWA is getting away with taking the outside lane on a major road for a couple hundred yards.
Who was blocking the road in East Agania?
That funeral home.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And they put a kibosh to that after so long.
Well, I suspect that the difference is that, a governmental agency versus a private business, but I don't know, Sam. I wish I did know, but I don't know the answer to that.
Because KUAM did a story about the apartment building right next to it where they have raw sewage coming up in the apartment building. But you would think after 9 months, GWA, with all this money that they have, would be able to get something fixed along those lines and reopen the road.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and when things like the tape that everybody's talking about come along, it just redirects attention back to what customers think is poor service, doesn't it, Sam?
Sure does.
Yeah.
And pretty soon we'll have a new motto that Guam will be called the steel plate capital of the world.
Notice that.
Our roads are nothing but steel plates all over the place.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
So anyway, I just was wondering who can control that and how they get away with over 9 months of having that section of road closed.
Well, the good news, Sam, is that when you get caught in a situation like that, you can listen to Tall Tales on the radio, and you can let our international radio listening audience know about the problem in Assen, and perhaps someone out there in our international radio listening audience might be able to suggest a solution. So thanks a lot for calling, Sam.
That's why I'm calling to the much brighter minds than my own.
Okay. Good luck in the traffic jam.
All right. Have a good show.
So long. Okay, we got a break coming up here, and then after the break, I've got Jimmy and I've got Francis. So I'm going to go to Francis first, Jimmy, because you already had one bite off the apple. And then after Francis, we got that big halftime show coming up here at 1700. So be right back in a second.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data2Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is Data2Go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
So here we are back again, and I've got Francis. Good afternoon, Francis.
Good afternoon, sir. I wanted to ask you a question about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were in the island of Chuuk at one time?
I've been there, yeah.
I wanted to find out from you if it was true that some of the residents are metered. In other words, like parking meters, where if you wanted power, all you had to do was deposit money in it. Is that true?
Could be. I don't know, Francis. I wasn't there that long, and but I've heard of such things, and even in mainland locations that yeah, you stick money in your meter to buy power.
Right. Well, that was probably the only thing I wanted to ask you. Other than it's going to be a beautiful weekend.
Well, for some folks, but not for our international radio listening audience and the Real Joe Cruz and I, because we won't have any tall tales for 2 whole days. And the Real Joe Cruz, you know, probably about noon tomorrow, he'll be jonesing pretty bad because he doesn't have any tall tales to look forward to. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The Medical Society recommended pineapple juice, you know, on the rocks.
Well, we'll pass that on to the Real Joe Cruz.
All right, Uncle. Hey, you have a wonderful day, and nice talking to you and listening all the time.
Thanks again, Francis.
Welcome.
Okay, so I'm just peeking out of the corner of my eye here at some of the Facebook comments, and here's Jesse Limtiaco. So who's going to be qualified enough to run GPA and agreed to be paid lower? Well, the answer to that is really easy, Jesse. How about John Beneventi? Because if you are running a business as a general principle, the reason that you're in business is you want to make more money. You want to bring in more money than you put out. So you hire employees when you need employees. If you have a hard time getting the kind of people that you need, you raise the price that you're going to pay employees. If not, and if you have, and retention is good, nobody is leaving, then there's no reason to raise salaries. Hard-hearted as that sounds, you know, wow, how cruel. You're not going to give people a raise just because they need the money? No. So in a business, you know, if you're hiring people, you hire them because putting them on the payroll allows you to make more money. If there's a scarcity of the kind of skills you need, you're going to pay more for it. If there's an abundance of it, you're going to pay less. If the people that are working for you are stable and they're not leaving, then there's perhaps no reason to raise salaries. Cutting salaries, that might be a little different, but you know, there isn't any good economic reason for raising salaries just because you think it would be nice to raise salaries. Unless you are a sole proprietor and you're dealing with your own money and you want to be a good guy, fine. But the CCU is not dealing with its own money. They're dealing with my money and yours and the Real Joe Cruz and Jimmy's and everybody else's. So it could very well be that we're paying John Beneventi a lot more than what we need to pay him to keep him on board. With respect to somebody else who's qualified, you don't know until you look. And if we're so satisfied with what we have that we're not going to look, we're just going to keep raising salaries willy-nilly, then that's all we're ever going to wind up with is higher salaries. Okay, I've got about 4 more minutes here to the big halftime show that comes on here at 1700. Let me see if there's anything else in Facebook that would merit my comment here. I've got James Howard's really been working hard on Facebook today. And we've got a Tom on. We've got one of the Toms here who's mounted up, notebook ready, and set to go with tall tales. Hoping, I suppose, that we'll do a little Law and Order routine here. Jesse Limtiaco is still standing beside the road, waving, apparently starting his senatorial campaign a little early. And James Howard says, I'm on his podcast, and I'm now famous in Niger, in Africa. Well, that's kind of an eye-opener for me, because I would have thought that it would have already occurred, you know, with my international radio. But anyhow, thanks, James Howard. And Shelley Gibson's wishing me a happy Friday. Thank you, Shelley. And Nate's horning in. And James Limtiaco, the reason GWA and ratepayers are $600 million in the hole, and then he's got a link to something. It's really good, you know, to make your point by putting a link on Facebook, knowing that I'll never be able to click on the link and never know what it is that you're talking about. Nate Horn, I can already feel the cold beer in my hand, and it's not even 5 yet. Yeah, well, there's a guy who knows what the big halftime show is all about. And James Horn, we are a republic for the people. Well, we were a republic. I'm not so sure anymore, if you've heard my rant about the national government versus the Republican form of government that we started out with. James Limtiaco, or can the EPA sue the U.S. Coast Guard for their role in polluting the waters in Molesso? I give up. I didn't know the waters in Molesso were polluted. Joe Cruz, Turk 182. What, that sounds familiar from somewhere. Some kind of a James Hutton movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Boy, it's been a long time. And Jesse Limtiaco has a very nice meme there with a blue star, a boy and his dog, and a spinning blue star. Wow, very good. Thank you, Jesse. And we got James Howard shouting encouragement for the Daily News. He says, PDN, boo. That's probably the most encouragement they're going to get, James Howard. Well, here we are, right up cheek by jowl with the 5 o'clock halftime show. So we're going to take a break. I'll come back and do a little more Facebooking, and then I'll get into the card, which is, first item on the card is Clint versus Halloween.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A plan for new tariffs on Mexico rattles investors. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Trump's surprise announcement yesterday that he plans to slap new tariffs on Mexico sent jitters through U.S. stock futures and is causing an uproar with Mexican leaders. Dow futures now down 219 points. Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney.
This is already impacting the economy negatively. National security is the first and foremost priority for any president of the United States. And this president will do everything that he legally can to defend the nation.
Fox's Rob Dawson explains the president's plan.
On June 10th, the U.S. will impose a 5% tariff on all goods coming into our country from Mexico until such time as illegal migrants coming through Mexico and into our country stop. He added the tariff will gradually increase until the illegal immigration problem is remedied.
The president's move comes just one day after Border Patrol agents captured a group of 1,000 illegal immigrants crossing into the country from Mexico. A member of Mexico's central bank tweeting about the tariffs a few hours ago, "This is a game changer," and Mexico's top diplomat calls it disastrous. President Trump also taking his frustrations out on former special counsel Robert Mueller after his departing comments Wednesday.
I think he is a total conflicted person. I think Mueller is a true never-Trumper. He's somebody that dislikes Donald Trump.
Mueller said Wednesday that charging President Trump with any crime in court was not an option because of federal rules. But he emphasized he did not exonerate the president. And breaking news from the Philippines, military officials say that Muslim militants shot and killed a long-held Dutch hostage as he tried to escape during a gun battle with troops Friday. This is Fox News.
We have some really great home loan programs, but do you know we have great business loans too? Every day we're working with companies to purchase equipment, to buy or build properties, or make tenant improvements. We offer letters of credit, working capital, and term loans, and we make all of our credit decisions here. Commercial loans, commercial banking from Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
It's what many people feared. Police in Connecticut are reportedly treating the case of a missing mother of 5 as a homicide. That after finding blood in her home in New Canaan. The Hartford Courant reports that police found the blood on Saturday. Jennifer Doulos disappeared Friday. She had been locked in a bitter divorce battle with her estranged husband, Fotis Stubos, since 2017. Chicago police released more than 400 pages of documents related to the investigation into actor Jussie Smollett's alleged fake hate crime.
Newly released records show Chicago police were told days after Jussie Smollett was indicted that the case against him may not go to trial and instead be settled with a fine and community service. That's only one of many new details coming to light after a judge ordered hundreds of police files that were tied to the case be made public. And these documents are just part of the investigation. Police say there is still a lot more to come, including hours and hours of videos, and those are expected to be released within the next coming days.
Fox's Mark Meredith. 3 people who live in Mississippi filed suit claiming the state's election system is racist.
Mississippi's constitution was adopted in 1890, and it mandated that for anyone to be elected governor or any other statewide office, they needed to win not just the popular vote in a state, but a majority of the districts making up the Mississippi House of Representatives. And should not a winner emerge, the House members get to pick a governor, irrespective of how their districts voted. The 3 African-American plaintiffs say this system is used to ensure majority white districts can overpower black ones. The lawsuit is funded by a group led by Obama-era Attorney General Eric Holder. Eben Brown, Fox News.
And the Toronto Raptors take Game 1 of the NBA Finals, beating the Golden State Warriors 118-109. This is Fox News.
Two for one dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2 for one dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Legends aren't born, they are made. And during our Jeep Celebration event at Cars Plus and Mighty, you'll receive up to $6,000 in accessories for the purchase of a new Jeep Wrangler, Motor Trend SUV of the Year. Customize your new Jeep to the way you want it. Or how about a new Jeep Grand Cherokee? Save up to $5,000. Or save up to $7,500 on a new Jeep Compass Sport. It's our Jeep Celebration event going on now at Cars Plus and Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you. Accessory special cannot be combined with other offers. See dealer for details.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. I know everybody really enjoyed it. So I've got some more Facebooking to do. I've cracked the nut on Turk 182. Before I get into that, I'm going to go back to the two Jimmies. Hello, Jimmies.
Oh, howdy.
Hi.
Yeah. I heard earlier there was a problem with raw sewage.
Uh-huh.
So my solution, get the governor and the village mayors and the mayor's council to cook that raw sewage. Then it won't be raw anymore. Then they can feed it to our beloved fellow Guamanians.
Yeah, I guess if you start out with raw meat and you cook it, it's not raw anymore, right, Jimmy?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. I got to
Yeah, I said if you start out with a chunk of raw meat and you cook it, it's not raw anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a chunk of sewage,
Uh-huh.
you got to cook it.
Well, I'll give you this, Jimmy. Sometimes... Hey, Jimmy, I'll give you this. Sometimes your sense of humor is kind of raw.
Well, I need somebody to cook it for me.
Okay, well...
At least you didn't call it sewage.
All right. Well, thanks for the tip, Jimmy. Well, it's always good to get these little bits of information from you. Okay, so Turk 182. I remembered it, and I found this on the web. After New York City firefighter Terry Lynch is unable to receive any compensation for an injury incurred during an off-duty rescue of a young girl, he grows suicidal. Furious, his brother Jimmy, how about that, huh? Played by Timothy Hutton. So when they do Tall Tales, the movie, right? We could probably get Timothy Hutton to play the role of Jimmy.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Real Joe Cruz, Danny DeVito?
That would be sweet. And maybe Richard Gere to play you?
Should be somebody a little taller, but yeah, I guess Richard Gere would probably work, yeah. Yeah. Probably not quite as good looking as I am, but yeah, what the heck. Details, right? Furious, his brother Jimmy, attempts to have Mayor Tyler intervene, but the corrupt politician instead denounces Terry as a drunk. Corrupt politician. Yeah, I can see where this Turk 182 is coming from, right? Determined to get justice, Terry begins a graffiti campaign of embarrassing slogans mocking the mayor, which soon captivates the city. Well, putting this all together there, we got Jimmy, we got corrupt politicians, and I suppose, in a sense, Tall Tales is oral graffiti, at least in the minds of politicians, right? Because the graffiti was used embarrassing slogans to mock a corrupt politician. So in that sense, maybe Tall Tales is oral graffiti. Okay, so going back to Facebook and seeing what's going on here on Facebook, Andrew Bainham, new name for the CCU, Contemptuous Commission on Utilities. I like it. That's right out of the Turk 182 playbook, isn't it? Let's see what else I got here. James Howard says the outside lane, talking about the outside lane of Marine Corps Drive in Assen, the outside lane is protected under MJ-12, Ultra Secret Space Force. I'll tell you what, you look at the Tall Tales Facebook, and it's just a font of information. Let's see. Jesse Limtiaco. It's not James Limtiaco. I guess I must have erroneously referred to Jesse Limtiaco as James Limtiaco. Okay, well, my bad, Jesse. I'll work on that one. And we got Lee Stolley, who hasn't been around for a while, but he's here today. And we got James Howard. Make them eat it, Jimmy. Wow. There's a Jimmy disciple if there ever was one. Okay, and James Howard, Chuck Norris will play the judge. So if it's Tall Tales, the movie, who else could play the host of Tall Tales except Chuck Norris?
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I should have. How silly of me not to figure that one out by myself. Yeah. Yeah, good call, James. Okay, let's see. On line one, I've got Jesse. Good afternoon, Jesse.
Hey, good afternoon, Senator. I just have a quick question. Were you in the legislature when they did the additional when I don't know if it was Tom Adder or something that introduced borrowing $200 million for the utilities? I'm not sure. I'm trying to, because I know that they had that federal case. That's the one I put a link on Facebook, but I guess you have to, I guess you can't click it, but,
Well, I could, but it's kind of awkward here in the middle of the show to be clicking on it.
I know.
Yeah. No, the 2 terms I was in the legislature, there was no Tom Adda. Tom Adda sat those 2 out.
Okay. So you were in there at the time when they were discussing borrowing more money for the utilities, right? Or to comply with that court order for the Clean Water Act or whatever it is.
I don't think so. I was there. I was there when we did the when we set up the Luzon landfill. That's the only thing that I remember that had an environmental aspect. What's your point? What's your point, Jesse?
No. So I just wanted to know how that works. It was similar to the dump case, right? I mean, basically a court order saying that the government has to pay X amount to fix the dump or fix the water system, right? I mean, that's pretty much what happened.
Well, if it's
now we're like $600 million in the hole for that, for GWA to change all the water lines and all that infrastructure and stuff, I guess.
Well, Simon has explained on more than one occasion that when the CCU started, there was a federal consent decree dealing with wastewater, dealing with sewage. We could call Jimmy in here as an expert witness on that, and that was their top priority. Now, how much money they had to borrow for that, I'm sure Simon mentioned, but I don't remember how much it was. But this is how it works. When a government violates some of these environmental wacko federal laws, the U.S. government will sue. And oftentimes, rather than allowing the case to go to judgment, the local government will stipulate to a consent decree where they agree to do certain things in accordance with a particular timetable. And that's it. We had a consent decree for mental health. We had one for the prison. The one that we're talking about here with respect to sewage, and then, of course, the one for the dump.
Mm-hmm. So these are all federal cases, and again, something like the Clean Water Act is signed by the president, right? And Congress and the Senate approve it. The U.S. Congress and Senate approve it.
They are what most people would call federal laws, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, how we ended up getting stuck with that whole bill. So that's just my whole thing, you know what I mean? Obviously the incompetence or, the mismanagement through the years led us to having a bad water system and all this stuff, and obviously population increase and all that stuff. But, just kind of wondering how it got that bad. I mean, the military had to assume that, hey, man, maybe we should have helped Guam fix this problem, I mean, kind of like the dump, I think there's still a lingering issue of the Navy supposed to have their hand in paying that as well. So,
well, as far as the dump is concerned, the government of Guam has filed suit against the U.S. because allegedly the Navy was using the dump, the Ordot dump, before 1950. So some of the damage should be theirs. But Jesse, I hope we're not back into a game of victims and villains here again. Are we? Or
no, I'm just trying to point out again that they're just. I mean, I don't think people in a state would would be necessarily happy with that type of decree. And again, we're going to come back to this not having a representative in the Senate.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. That's where you're going, and it happens in the States just like it happens here. It's no different. And
right.
And the fact that there are congressional delegations in the states doesn't necessarily make these things go away.
Okay.
So I see where you're going.
Just to clear up again, that there's the Senate appoints the federal judge, right, on Guam?
No, the president appoints the federal judge. He's confirmed by, or they are confirmed by the Senate.
Okay. So if I see. Okay, and usually the governor nominates or somebody on Guam would say, okay, here's our choice for or who we recommend should serve on Guam. Or
in the states, it would be the senatorial delegation that whispers in the president's ear who they would like to see appointed to federal judgeships, which makes sense since the Senate confirms. Here, it's usually the highest-ranking member of the party of the president. So that's the way it usually works here.
So it can get a little political.
Well, when you're dealing with political appointments, yeah, it's a little political, but probably not as political as some of the other federal appointments that are made.
But let's say the judge says, okay, I'm in favor of doing this dissent decree on for Guam, or and assuming that there's a Senate or something that will say, okay, let's recommend this person for another 10 years, or let's make them serve longer because they did this and they did that, and or they ruled this way or that way.
Well, if you're a dedicated listener to Tall Tales, Jesse, you'd remember that in my approach to what we ought to be doing, we ought to be making the best of the status that we have. Mm-hmm. And our federal judge has a 10-year tenure. In fact, Francis Gatewood is overdue to be replaced. Mm-hmm. Puerto Rico, the judges have life tenure, so we could have life tenure too if we would just ask for it. But we haven't asked for it, and it would be something of an advantage, because if a judge has a 10-year term, at least the suspicion is that judge is probably going to be favoring the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice is going to make a recommendation to the president as to who the next federal judge should be. But if all we're going to do is sit around and kvetch about it, then it's not going to change.
Well, how do we change that, though? Who would be the...
Our representative in Congress would introduce a bill to change the tenure of the District Court of Guam judge to a life tenure. And I have a feeling it would whizzle right on through if it's properly handled.
Well, yeah, maybe that's something you should look at then,
Well, that's what I'm saying. As long as we're going to spend so much time and effort on the Commission for Chamorro Independence, then these things don't happen. We've never even asked the Congress for decolonization. We're so caught up in the victims and villains undertaking that we're not trying to make the best of the situation that we have.
Right. Well, I'm not sure about the if we, about the colonization and asking to be decolonized. I don't know how far that goes back in history or whatever, but I don't know. Thanks. I just wanted to check on that and share your thoughts. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to get a clarification, or if you were serving at the time when they were discussing about that bond borrowing for GWA.
I didn't have the pleasure, Jesse. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, and have a good weekend.
Thanks for calling, Jesse. Okay, so let's see. I finished Facebook, so now I go to the card, and let's see. I've got Clint versus Halloween. I've got Bavacqua bites the dog, and you'll have to give the explanation of what that term means. Bavacqua bites the dog when we get there, Real Joe Cruz. You've done it before. In fact, I could almost say that the kennel is located in there in the control room. because you're always explaining the significance of a man biting a dog right after you tell us, right after I ask you what the dog did, and you will very quickly reply,
It's not what he did, it's what he didn't do.
there you go. Okay, so Clint versus Halloween. Rigel on utility pay raises. The trick is on us. Public Utility Oversight Chairman Clint Rigel said he was reminded of Halloween trick-or-treaters after listening to a recording of the November 27 closed-door meeting held by the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. In a written response to a request for comment from the Post, the senator stated, quote, "The fact that they are handing out bonuses and raises as if they're handing out candy to trick-or-treaters at Halloween shows that the CCU has lost touch with the average household who is struggling to pay ever-increasing power and water bills." Trick-or-treaters. And I want to just stop here for a second. You know, we're all familiar with the executive session that was illegal. And we all know how the illegality was uncovered. And we all know that Joey Duenas took blame by saying, yeah, it was my mistake because we were doing an evaluation. And when we finished the evaluation, we should have come into open session to discuss salary. And then when the Post and I and Snow White and half the dwarves sent in FOIAs saying, let us see the minutes of that executive session, let us hear the electronic recording, Joey Duenas dug his heels in and he says, I'm not going to release that. I want a judge to tell me I have to release it. I've got to protect the privacy of those people that we evaluated. Every time it came up, Joey was just adamant. So adamant that when a 3-2 vote said turn that stuff loose, Joey said, I'm not going to sign the letter. So we finally get to listen to the recording, and guess how much time they spent on evaluations during that 43-minute meeting? Yeah, one big donut hole. It was all a Halloween trick-or-treat. Well, let's give this one $5,000, or you know, let's raise his salary and give him a bonus, or now he doesn't want it, well, give it to him anyhow, and on and on and on and on. So it sheds a lot of light on Joey Duenas, the chairman's motivation as to why this stuff was going on. And then it kind of goes back to one of my favorite historical moments going back in the Watergate era, when Senator Howard Baker, during the Watergate investigations, said the important questions here are, what did the president know and when did he know it? So the Civil Service, the CCU commissioners are all saying, oh, we didn't know. We didn't know we weren't supposed to go into executive session. We didn't know that we couldn't do salaries in executive session. Well, I have an article that ran in a newspaper called the Mariana's Variety, which later on became the Post. It goes back a few years, and this is what it said. Elected officials and board and commission members from various government of Guam entities attended an ethics training workshop on Friday, February 13 at Guam Community College. The workshop is required by law, was hosted by Speaker Judy Wanpat in collaboration with Guam Community College for newly elected members of the legislature and newly appointed and elected members of various governing bodies. The 3-hour class was instructed by former Senator, guess who? Dr. Judith Guthertz, as a public service. Those in attendance also included elected and appointed officials, renewing their ethics training requirement. And then it says Barnes, Blas, Espaldon, Narissa Underwood, Lourdes San Nicolas, Elizabeth Ichihara Rosario, Michelle Santos, George Bamba, and Francis Santos from the Consolidated Commission on Utilities were all in participation. And then at the final paragraph, I would like to thank Dr. Guthertz for leading this important workshop, said Speaker Juan Pat. It's essential that government officials, especially those who are elected with a trust of the people, are guided by a sense of ethical responsibility. So we had 2 commission members that took the class. The instructor was Dr. Judith Guthertz, and I went through the curriculum for that class a couple days ago. Item number 10 on the list of things that the class covered is the Sunshine Law and the Open Government Act. So, I didn't know we weren't supposed to discuss salary. I didn't know. Open Government Law, executive session, what's that? So, going back into this article here, the CCU released the audio recording of the controversial executive session Wednesday. During the closed-door meeting, pay raises and bonuses for employees and executives at the Guam Power Authority and Waterworks Authority were discussed. The raises and bonuses have since been rescinded following a directive from the Attorney General, who ruled that the meeting was a violation of the Open Government Law. He ordered that the raises and bonuses be paid back. On Tuesday, the Commission on Utilities voted to release the audio recording of the executive session. The motion carried with 4 votes in favor and 1 against. Interestingly enough, Judith Guthertz reversed her position. First vote, she voted against it. Second time, she voted in favor. Maybe she went back and looked at her notes from the course that she taught. CCU Chairman Joey Duenas was the sole dissenting vote. Yeah. After listening to the recording of their illegal executive session discussions, it is apparent that the utilities are tricking themselves and the trick is on us, Senator Rigel said. Well, pretty nice choice of words there, Clint. Pretty nice release, right on point, etc. And it is the Power Authority is your committee. You are the chairman of the committee that has jurisdiction over the Power Authority. So now that you know that you've been tricked, what's next? Is this time for the legislature to do something about the trickery, actually the treachery of the CCU? And we'll talk about that right after the 7th inning stretch.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
that's the that crack of the bat. Wrigley Field, Chicago. We're on location out here in the center field bleachers for the seventh inning stretch, as is our custom every day. We observe the game, we take a stretch, etc. And now there's just 2 more innings of tall tales for this week. And then the real Joe Cruz and I go into hibernation. Like a couple of old bears. We go into hibernation for 2 days and come out of hibernation at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. Really, really glad to get back into our tall tales routine. So from now on, for the rest of the program, I've got Bavacqua Bites the Dog, and I've got Hila on San Nicolas versus the Outrigger Hotel. I've got Underwood versus San Nicolas, and John Brown versus Roseanne Jones. Some really interesting topics here. John Brown versus Roseanne Jones is about the lack of necessity to raise the minimum wage, if we get to that section. Now, with Bavacqua Bites the Dog, real Joe Cruz, if a dog bites a man, is that news?
No, it's not.
Yeah. How about if a man bites a dog?
Oh, that's
definitely newsworthy.
definitely news.
Yeah.
Prime time news.
Yeah. Well, with respect to Bavacqua here, I've commented on several of his articles, all of which seem to be cut from the same cloth. And in order to add understanding to almost everything that he writes, we did a little Chautauqua here on critical theory. Critical theory is a social theory oriented towards critiquing and changing society as a whole, in contrast to traditional theory oriented only to understanding or explaining. Critical theories aim to dig beneath the surface of social life and uncover assumptions that keep us from a full and true understanding of how the world works. Critical theory emerged out of Marxist tradition and was developed by a group of sociologists at the University of Frankfurt in Germany who referred to themselves as the Frankfurt School. Over the years, the goals and tenets of critical theory have been adopted by many social scientists and philosophers who have come after the Frankfurt School. We can recognize critical theory today in many feminist theories, feminist approaches to conducting social science, in critical race theory, cultural theory, and gender and queer theory, and in media theory and media studies. Without going too much farther into it, that's what I see when I read Bavacqua's columns. I see exercises in critical theory. I see cultural Marxism at work, and the words are different, the thrust is different, but the message is almost always the same, and it always comes down to oppressor and oppressed. That in order to understand what goes on in the world in general and in our island in particular, you have to understand who the oppressor is and who the oppressed is. And that's what I was talking with Jesse a little earlier about the victimology approach to dealing with issues. Who is the victim? And if there is a victim, then obviously there has to be a villain. And so often in the discussions that Bavacqua, in the fights that Bavacqua wants to pick, the victim is the people of Guam, sort of, but really Chamorros. And the villain is always the United States, preferably white folks from the United States. That's the general message. And I oftentimes go through Bavacqua's columns, pointing these things out and pointing out a different way of understanding, or perhaps a look at reality as opposed to victimology with respect to the issues that are under discussion. So I probably would have to say that a card would generally be Tall Tales versus Bavacqua. That's the general thrust of things. Today is different. And I guess part of it stands for the proposition, if you live long enough, you're liable to see almost anything. And today, I actually agree with Bavacqua's column. Yeah. Yeah, I should have alerted the folks over at the emergency room. I expect that ambulances will fill the highways with heart attack victims, people sitting there, listening to, watching tall tales on their phones or whatever. Oh my God, I don't believe it. Ah. So, Bavacqua, territories have no actual recognizable sovereignty. Well, not a very good headline, but of course the author of the column doesn't choose the headline. That's the copywriter, and oftentimes there's a disconnect. He goes on to say, my past two columns have covered the issue of writing a constitution for Guam prior to the issue of determining a direction for its political status. And, I without going back over those columns, in order to really understand his objection to to our cutting our own constitution, it's this. If we do our own constitution, it's going to have to conform to the Constitution of the United States, which causes me to say, hooray, equal protection, due process, that kind of stuff. But Bavacqua says it wouldn't be able to address the unique aspects and needs of the Chamorro people, causing me to coin a new word. Here it goes. I hope that Webster's is on the line. It'll be in the next edition of Webster's. Here's the new word, chamocracy. Yeah, so, doing a little Greek here, the word democracy, demo means people, cracy is a suffix that means government by. So democracy is government by the people. Theocracy is a government by the religious, right? So what I see in all of Bavacqua's writings is that Guam has to be independent. Otherwise, we can't have a chamocracy, government by Chamorros. And I suppose there are some people who say, well, yeah, what else could it be? Anyhow, that's what I see in a lot of Bavacqua's writings and his opposition to our preparing our own constitution here right now. And I'll go through the rest of the column, then come back to that point. He said, my past two columns have covered the issue of writing a constitution of Guam prior to the island determining a direction for its political status. If we imagine a constitution to be like a map to get the island to a particular place, determining a political status is akin to the stars, celestial bodies set far above that enable the map to move us forward. Determining what you want in terms of Guam's place in the world is essential in figuring out the type of constitution that would best fit. Previous attempts at changing Guam's political status make this clear. The movement for Commonwealth, for instance, was born from a desire to change the island's status, but also represents the conflicting desires of Guam's many people. There was a strong desire to use the Commonwealth to provide protections for the Chamorro people. Little chamocracy there. To be able to limit immigration and also ensure that Guam is not unfairly affected by U.S. laws. Part of Commonwealth was an attempt to ensure greater autonomy. But there was also a desire to remain close to the U.S. Guam has been attached to the U.S. for more than a century. This attachment has molded so much about how we see ourselves and those around us for good or for bad. This attachment also led to various monies that enter the island through federal funding sources. There was also a desire to remain attached to the U.S. to carve out a unique relationship that would allow Guam to maintain a sense of uniqueness while also benefiting from what the U.S. potentially has to offer. Commonwealth was not achieved for Guam for a variety of reasons, one of which was lack of skill on the part of its proponents. I just added that myself, real Joe Cruz. Depending on where you were, speculating you could blame the feds or you could blame local leaders. Regardless of who you blame, the overarching problem was that what Guam was seeking was very contradictory. It wanted a place that was integrated with the U.S., but also distinct and separate, having the ability to say yes to certain things from the U.S. and reject others. In truth, the U.S. Congress could make such contradictory status a reality. Something I've been saying over and over again, that I would advance in an argument that in some respects, unincorporated territory is by far the best political status under the Stars and Stripes. And I would point out that given the situation with an unincorporated territory, we could do things that states couldn't even dream of. And I'll give you the Northern Marianas. In the Northern Marianas, and I've been through this on trying to correct the myth that people on Guam are second-class citizens. In the Northern Marianas, the laws hold that if you were a person of Northern Marianas descent, you could own fee simple title to real property. If you ain't, you can't. So I could go to Saipan with a basket full of money, and I can't buy real estate in Saipan outright. I could get a long-term lease. That's the best I could do. And that provision has been to the Ninth Circuit. And the Ninth Circuit said, yeah, it's okay. And another example is that in the Northern Marianas Congress, there are two houses, and the upper house is called the Senate. And in the Senate, Rota has 3 representatives, Tinian has 3, Saipan and the Northern Islands have 3. Not even roughly close to one man, one vote, because the island of Saipan is grossly underrepresented, and Luta is grossly overrepresented. Ninth Circuit said that's okay also. So there is an opportunity here for tremendous flexibility because of our status as an unincorporated territory. So back to Bavacqua's column. In truth, the U.S. Congress could make such contradictory status a reality. The U.S. Constitution and legal precedent give the Congress absolute right over the territories, which means they can allow things in the territories that are otherwise unconstitutional. As an example, the Chamorro Land Trust. Unfortunately, the enabling legislation for the Chamorro Land Trust is grossly flawed. But had it been done right, petition to Congress might have resulted in the amendment to our Equal Protection Clause that said the concept of equal protection doesn't apply to Chamorro Land Trust leaseholds. The Congress clearly has the ability to do that. Going back to the column here, long ago the insular cases authorized that for the territories. The Constitution works on a light switch and can be turned on and off with a flick of Congress. Well, I think that's an exaggeration, but it's the kind of figure of speech that I might use myself, so I'll let it go, right, real Joe Cruz? Yeah. But would the U.S. allow Guam to have this level of control? Most likely not, and the issue comes down to sovereignty. Well, most likely not, because why? Because we haven't ever asked, we've never asked to be decolonized. You know, we fetch over and over again about, our so-called grievances and our victim status. but there has never been a petition from the people of Guam to the U.S. Congress saying, we don't want to be a colony anymore. And my approach to that is this: let's take a vote. And there would be a question on the vote: should the island of Guam become a sovereign nation independent from the United States of America? Yes or no? All the rest of it is just fluff and a good place, an abundance of soapboxes for the Bavaquas of the island to mount and use it as a mixing metaphors here, use a megaphone to preach their cultural Marxist message. But would the U.S. allow Guam to have this level of control? Most likely not. And the issue comes down to sovereignty. Through various court decisions for the territories, the U.S. consistently recognizes only two types of sovereignty: the types that states have and the type that independent countries have. Well, the states are indeed subordinate sovereigns under the United States. And the only sovereignty in the territory here is national sovereignty, the sovereignty of the United States. When territories have tried to assert that they have a form of territorial sovereignty, both district and Supreme Courts have ruled that the territories have no actual recognizable sovereignty. We had a couple of cases just last year out of Puerto Rico, and when the Puerto Rican Commonwealth Act was passed by Congress back in '52, there was a very well-ordered attempt to recognize Puerto Rico as sovereign. But the Supreme Court, in a double jeopardy case and in a finance case, said, no, Puerto Rico's just another unincorporated territory. So Barack was right. Of course, even a broken clock tells the correct time twice a day, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
And the column goes on, what they have is limited authority on loan from the Congress. Now, I don't know that the Congress has ever taken any of that limited authority back, except in one particular case. The authority comes from Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which I've read before, but I'll read it again. It says, the Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, the so-called territorial clause. Wow, already, huh? Okay. Coming down the home stretch here.
2-for-1 dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2-for-1 dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Bavacqua Bites the Dog here in the home stretch. Francis is on the line again. Afternoon again, Francis.
You know what, Bob? What you were reading off when you mentioned something about the desire of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Is this coming from the Bavacqua so-called petition for political status?
No, it's just language he's using in his column. I don't think Bavacqua has ever been involved in a petition, to the best of my knowledge.
I think that's to me that's I want to see if he's got names, people that support his political status independence. I want to see this. I want to see it published. I want to I want to see him and talk to him. I want him in public, and I want him to address you or maybe address us on the radio station or and so I can hear from him, because this is like something out of the freaking joke book, when he's saying, when it says the desire of the people, it's not the majority of the people, as I've mentioned to them before. You need primarily, you need the governor, lieutenant governor, 15 elected officials, a majority of the people of Guam. I don't know if they need to be registered voters or citizens of the United States, but this is some of the things that are not clear, that they only know. Some of this information that comes out is only coming from a few people, but it's not a majority of the people. Half of these people don't even know what's going on. And I don't need a PhD to represent me on some kind of political status public hearing. I'll just bring the elders. I'll bring you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Francis. I'd be glad to go along. And the interesting thing is that Bavacqua and so many others have pretty good government jobs, working in effect for the colonizer, since the government of Guam was created by the United States, working for the colonizer, talking, independence. And I wonder if the independence crowd said, we're going to have a meeting down at Epal Beach at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning for everybody who really favors independence, I wonder how many people would show up.
6.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to hurt anybody's feeling, but this is something that I really have to speak out, because when I hear something that there's a lot of them, and then there's a third of the island residents, and half of them are not even registered to vote, and a lot of them just don't want to have anything to do with the system. Instead of working the system, maybe we can find a better way to get secure some kind of a better mutual national and local relationship, so we can just make things work, and do it right this time, instead of all this reminisce of the war and stuff like that. I'm sick and tired of hearing this about the war and the atrocities. I don't even have any parents anymore, and I've heard that since I was a little boy, as far back as Karen, when I was getting in line, after the typhoon, getting in line with my pots, getting some soup, and stuff, and rice from the Marines. Things like that brings back memories. So it's just that the information that I'm hearing is not. Half the people of this island of Timor don't even know what this independence. They're all trying to use some kind of excuse that Uncle Sam's no good and this and that. The system is flawed and stuff like that. But nobody seems to want to fix it. Find a way to make the relationship and the system maybe work better for us. And maybe I just I'm starting to exercise my GED education here, so I'll probably just have to leave you now, and thank you for taking my call, Bob.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Francis. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. So, let's see. Where was I here? Talking about independence. That's my approach is the same as Francis mentioned, and if I get to the end of this column, it's pretty much what Bavacqua says. And my approach has been this, that the United States has been an imperial power at least since 1898, maybe before that time. And the United States is still an imperial power, and we have our own empire. And Guam is a part of the American empire. And that's exactly where I think we should stay. I don't see a small island with 160,000 people unless there's something I haven't thought of, and no one is talking about how the independent Guam would operate, what it would be like, what its constitution would be like. So I think what we should do is stay in the American empire and do the best that we can to improve our situation in the American empire. As an example, when I was on the phone with Jesse here, our district court judge has a 10-year tenure, whereas district court judges ordinarily have life tenure. I think if we ask for it, we could have the same thing. And there are a lot of other things that if we ask for, we could probably get. But we don't ask. We sit around and kvetch and moan and talk about past injustices and things like that, and how not all of us, but some of the vocal ones do, how the United States is the villain and the Chamorro people or the people of Guam are always the victims. And I think we've got a really good story to tell here on Guam, and to me our message should be that Guam is American, and we're very important to America, and America needs to have a full appreciation for us, where we are and what we can do. Not that, that they should feel sorry for us or feel guilty or something like that. Anyhow, maybe I can finish this column on Monday. But everybody out there, to the extent that it's possible without tall tales, and I know that's asking a lot, have a nice weekend.